So now we take a look at the Circle of the Sun, a short Dzogchen text by Tsele Natsak Rengdro. And this is a very concise but really carefully described text that is very easy to understand. It's very, very clear. And we'll continue with this text on into the Togao because it's got both Trekcho and Togao in it. We begin at the first part. He talks about the ground, so lay the ground part of that. Then we'll get into more of the detail of the Trekcho as a practice. Now here on the first part of this, he notes that this is a transmission of Dzogchen text teachings requiring permission and empowerment for the practices of Trekcho and Togao, and you need to have received the pointing out instructions from a qualified master. So by virtue of being in this class, you need to have had those pointing out instructions, and we have received those from multiple lamas that we have had here in the past. So we will start off with the first part of this. I'm only going to touch on, there's several introductory sections here before the actual text, so I'll just touch on a couple of those things. This was written in 1989, to give you a little bit of a context, so it's a fairly recent text. There's a foreword by His Holiness Dilgo Khyentse Rinpoche. In that, he says that the Circle of the Sun would benefit everyone interested in Dharma. It's easy to comprehend and containing all the key points of the very direct instructions. So very high regard from one of our major contemporary scholars and experts, masters. There's also an introductory teaching here by Tulku Urgyen Rinpoche, and in that, I'll comment on a few of these things in a little bit more detail here. Studying a text like this requires some sense of courage and decisiveness, as well as confidence in the Dharma and definitely trust. You should be constant and have compassion and devotion, have a firm resolve, and be able to carry the practice through without doubt or hesitation. This work on Dzogchen by Tsele Natsak Rengdro provides instructions that are a complete path enabling a practitioner to attain perfect enlightenment within a single lifetime, the unified level of Vajradhara, as known as a royal throne of Samattabhadra. Pay careful attention to his advice. Short and concise, profound and encompassing, you should study it with great interest. This book condenses the heart of 6,400,000 tantras of great perfection into essential instructions. He also says the most effective style of teaching for a practitioner in this dark age is not lengthy scholarly explanation, for which I greatly apologize, but a direct guidance manual, triyik, which means short, comprehensive teaching. The Dzogchen Tantras themselves were written down in a style which shrouds and conceals the meaning so that only a master extremely well versed in oral instructions and treatises would be able to clarify the tantric statements. A guidance manual, on the other hand, is written down using oral instructions so as to be lucid and simple. So that means that these were given as an oral instruction. Someone wrote it down, or it was recorded and then transcribed into a written form. Trekcho and Togao are the two main topics of the book. Trekcho is the main view of the 8 practice lineages. Without the view of Trekcho, one doesn't reach the core of Togao practice. The Togao visions are manifestations of awareness, but lacking the correct view, recognizing Rigpa, they become nothing but manifestations of the karmic wind, expressions of dualistic fixation. Recognizing Rigpa is the key point in Trekcho. When engaging in Togao practice, after having mastered awareness, all manifestation will appear as manifestations of awareness, and wisdoms are the maturation of Rigpa, not dualistic mind. Recognition of Rigpa as Talopasad occurs through the gathering of accumulations and purifying obscurations and through the blessings of a qualified master. Depending on other means, should be known as delusion. Devotion is more important than scholarship. Receiving blessings refers to the moment of deep devotion. Through the single method of devotion, receiving the blessings and focusing on meditation, numerous practitioners of the past have reached accomplishment. The Kagyu and Nyingma are known more for the long line of realized masters than for great scholars. Their followers, for the most part, were male and female lay practitioners. The fact that not just a few, but a countless number of these practitioners would die while sitting up in undistracted wakefulness is because of the tradition of simple and direct teachings. A Garuda bird can fly instantaneously on hatching from an egg. Its wing power is fully perfected. In the same way, a Dzogchen practitioner attains complete enlightenment simultaneously with the death of his physical body. At the moment of death, an experienced yogi does not lose consciousness, but reaches enlightenment. There's a good overview introduction there. There is a brief prologue then, talks about the 4 sections, the mind space section, the secret instructions, and what he refers to as the innermost excelled section. So previously we've talked about 4 sections, now he's divided this into, we've talked about 3, here he's divided it into 4 sections, the special instruction or secret instruction one, and the innermost excelled section being the last 2. So section 1 here, there are 2 types of ground. The ground as an object of knowledge held to be absolute, the ground as primordially pure nature. So the first, the ground as an object of knowledge held to be absolute. The first of these 2 has 6 aspects. 1, the belief that the ground is spontaneously present. 2, the belief that the ground is indefinite. 3, the belief that the ground is definite. 4, the belief that it is totally changeable. 5, the belief that it can be said to be anything whatsoever. 6, the belief that it is multifaceted with various aspects. These 6 kinds of beliefs are taught to be incomplete and faulty ways of understanding the ground. Why are they faulty? So now he goes back through each of these. 1, concerning the belief that the ground is spontaneously present. If the ground had characteristics of defects or virtues spontaneously present from the beginning, this would contradict primordial purity, and thus be a faulty belief. Practicing the path would not be possible, and even if one practiced the path, it would be impossible to be liberated. Number 2, concerning the belief that the ground is indefinite. Were the ground unfixed, becoming whatever the mind thinks, consequently, the fault would be that confusion could arise even after having attained liberation. Number 3, concerning the belief that it is definite. If that were the case, change would be impossible. The fault would be that defilement of ignorance could not be purified. Number 4, concerning the belief that it is totally changeable. If that were the case, nothing would last. Consequently, the fault would be that the effect of liberation could again turn into a cause. Number 5, concerning the belief that it can be asserted to be anything whatsoever. Were one to hold that belief, functional things, as well as the ground, would be baseless. At the same time, the fault would be the assertion that the ground is permanent or discontinuous. Number 6, concerning the belief that it is multifaceted with various aspects, this is also inappropriate, for being the pure ground of liberation is the multitude of conceptual thoughts cannot be primordially pure ground. These 6 types of ground are faulty beliefs. They are partially biased and should not be accepted in the context as the true ground. Through them you will have no more than a partial understanding of the natural state. So the Dra Talgyur Root Tantra describes this. It is spontaneously present from the aspect of being variegated. It is indefinite from the aspect of all occurrences. It is definite, being unchanging. The power of manifestation is completely changeable. It can be asserted in various ways since everything arises. It is primordial purity, being free from confusion. And all various modes of appearing are held to be multifaceted. Among those different beliefs are a great number of assertions, since the great perfection manifests in all kinds of ways, but the genuine view of the natural state is totally free from any or even one of them. The Tantra's 6 spheres of Samattabhadra states, all these manifestations as stages of intellect in its own nature it is primordially pure. These various beliefs are ways in which the actual ground of primordial purity is perceived by the different types of intellects that have not realized it. So then we have the first type of ground, the 2 grounds. So the first type of ground, the ground of primordially pure nature. What is the actual faultless ground? Possessing neither the concreteness nor attributes, the ground is free from the limitation of permanence. Since the nature of all qualities are spontaneously present, it is free from the limitation of annihilation. It is the luminous space of great emptiness, inseparable from the innate pure wakefulness. The unchanging mind of Dharmakaya transcends the domains of utterance, thought, knowledge, and description. This original and natural state is the great primordial purity. It's itself the original ground. The aspect of its essence is labeled primordial purity. The aspect of its nature is given the name spontaneous presence. And the aspect of its appearing as the manifestation or expression of these 2, inseparable, is called all-pervasive compassion. In short, these 3 are taught to be one single identity with different aspects. The heart mirror of Vajrasattva says, understanding that the attributes of the ground are essence, nature, and compassion. According to the Pearl Garland Tantra, the primordially pure essence transcends description. The spontaneously present nature perfects whatever is perceived. The all-pervasive compassion is naturally manifest. This natural state of primordial purity, the ultimate truth of Dharmadhatu, the self-existing wisdom of awareness, the primordial Dharmakaya of original emptiness, the natural face of innate luminosity, neither possesses nor is tainted by any basis for labels, such as samsara and nirvana, pleasure and pain, existence and non-existence, truth and falsehood, permanence and annihilation, confusion and liberation, knowledge and ignorance, and so forth. They're all just labels. All the sutras and tantras agree that this ground is primordially present in everyone, from the tiniest insect to the Dharmakaya Samattabhadra. The Uttara Tantra teaches this space, free from the limit of a beginning, is the nature of all phenomena. Because of possessing it, all beings attain the passing beyond sorrow, the nirvana. This ground is also known as the virtuous Dharma nature of beginningless time, and as the Mahamudra, and as what the Mahamudra teachings call the Mahamudra of the natural state. In this context, the term primordial purity has been subjected to various scholastic objections from the learned and accomplished masters of the new schools. But since its meaning is similar to pure from the beginning, originally pure, or pure by nature, no fault lies in saying primordial purity. In fact, if primordial purity is incorrect, it follows that the aforementioned virtuous Dharma nature of beginning as time, or Mahamudra of the natural state, also becomes subject to objection. Therefore, to say primordial purity is not a fault. You may ask, if this primordial purity is emptiness, it is then utterly nihilistic state of void? No, it isn't. Although the primordially pure wisdom of aware emptiness transcends thought and description, the wisdom of the spontaneously present nature abides as the great primordial manifestation of empty cognizance. Moreover, the wisdom of all-pervasive compassion is endowed with the expression of unobstructed experience. Therefore, the ground as empty cognizance endowed with the core of awareness that is naturally free from all limitations. The Tantra of Luminous Space says, the wisdom of primordially pure essence is free from ignorance and all thoughts. The wisdom of spontaneously present nature abides as natural clarity of empty luminosity. The wisdom of all pervasive compassion is present as the unobstructed empty appearance. In this way, essence is indivisible awareness and emptiness, nature is indivisible luminosity and emptiness, and compassion is indivisible appearance and emptiness. Three forms of looking at wisdom. This is what is called the natural state, the original ground of primordial purity. So then the second type of ground here is the ground of confusion. Now follows an explanation of how the ground of confusion appeared from the common ground of primordial purity. So how did we get here? You may ask, if it is unreasonable for confusion to arise when the original natural state of great primordial purity is what it is, then how could sentient beings of the three realms appear? The answer is that although the aspect of the primordially pure essence does not possess any causes and conditions for confusion, confusion arises momentarily from the aspect of the spontaneously present nature and unobstructed compassion. The Tantra of Great Auspicious Beauty describes how this takes place. Kyema. Although I am devoid of confusion, confusion arose in my expression. After the nature manifested unobstructedly from the unchanging ground, ignorance naturally manifested from the indeterminate compassion. For example, although the sky does not truly possess clouds, the clouds still arise momentarily. Likewise, no ignorance exists in the ground, yet ignorance naturally arises from the aspect of what manifested as compassion. Thus, the natural state of the ground of spontaneous presence was formed. Accordingly, the inner space, the original ground of primordial purity, is present as inner luminosity, like a statue or a butter lamp within a vase. When the outer casing was broken and the wind of self-existing wisdom moved from this inner space, awareness ascended from the ground, and the self-display of the 8 gates of spontaneous presence naturally manifested. That is to say, the appearance of essence was unimpeded by self-cognizance. The appearance of nature was primordial radiance in the form of 5 colored lights, and the appearance of compassion was openness like the sky. This is called the ground appearance manifesting from the ground. So in part, he's talking about when you have a vase, you break the vase, you have space outside, space inside. This broken, they merge into the same. What are the 8 gates of spontaneous presence? These 8 are the gate of manifesting as compassion, as lights, as kayas, as wisdom, as non-duality, as freedom from extremes, as the impure gate of samsara and as the pure gate of wisdom. When condensed, they are all included within the last two, pure and impure gates. The time of this occurrence is called the great realm display of spontaneous presence, because all appearance and existence is manifest as lights and bodily forms. The realm of display of Sambhogakaya naturally manifests from the expression of the essence. The realm display of Nirmanakaya naturally manifests from the expression of the qualities. The impure gate of samsara naturally manifests from the expression of compassion, just like the self-display of a dream. Recognize these manifestations of the ground appearance as your own natural expression, and in the first moment cut directly through the movement of thought and realize the ultimate condition. In the second moment, perfect the great power of wisdom devoid of confusion, and thus ripen the ground into the fruition. When the self-display then dissolves back into the space of primordial purity, you are naturally liberated as the teacher Samittabhadra, who is enlightened before all of samsara and nirvana. To be unconfused and naturally liberated in the displays of spontaneous presence is also called Samittabhadra's ground of liberation. At this point, failing to recognize the self-display as self-display becomes the ground of confusion and is called the ground of confusion of sentient beings of the three realms. The term all ground mentioned in the general Dharma teachings refers to exactly this. Many other names are also given to aspects of its functions, such as true all ground of application, referring to the causes conducive to liberation, and all ground of various tendencies, pertaining to the aspects of causes for wandering in samsara. The general vehicles say, the all ground is the ground of everything. It is also the basis of nirvana. In this context, the Tagore teaches, not recognizing one's natural face, it is itself the beginning of samsara. You might ask now, why wouldn't confusion recur as before, after the spontaneous presence dissolved back into the primordial purity, and one has liberated through naturally cognizing the manner of the spontaneously present ground appearance manifesting from the ground? This is because no basis exists for its re-arising. Samittabhadra's liberation into the ground itself and the yogi liberated through practicing the path are both devoid of any basis for reverting back to becoming a cause, just like a person who has recovered from a plague or the fruit of a tsei tree. We're talking about how we become immune. Once we've had a particular disease, in many cases we become immune from that same disease. Other than these two cases, all sentient beings became confused when the ground appearance of spontaneous presence manifested from the original ground of primordial purity, and they failed to recognize that manifestation to be their own self-display. The illuminating lamp describes in detail how the confusion began. From the ground abiding in this way, the cause and the seed of confusion was the cognizant aspect strayed outward, and the clear and conscious state of mind. When the ignorance of primordial purity in a moment moved outward as manifest aspect, the mind which perceived them as objects was mistaken as to the distinction of ground and ground manifestation. Through the cause of this confusion, the objects and their condition met. The cause of is the ignorance of the single identity, the mind itself. Failing to recognize itself is the co-emergent ignorance, and that which fixates on the self-display as something other is the conceptual ignorance. Confusion is thus caused by these three types of ignorance, which are single principle within different aspects. The failure to recognize them as the essence, nature, and compassion form the causal condition. The self-radiance of the wisdom of empty luminosity manifesting as the light mansions of the spontaneous presence formed the object condition. Perceiving this as a concrete and separate subject and object, without recognizing them as being empty luminosity, formed the fixating condition. One's confusion therefore arose through these 6 causes and conditions. The 6 spheres describes this. At first confusion, arose from the 6-fold ignorance. Following this, the wind of karma appeared and fixated on the natural expression of emptiness, manifest as 5 colored lights, as if they were concrete. The power of engaging in this fixation on the natural lights of the 5 wisdoms caused them to appear as the concrete 5 elements. From the essences of the 5 outer elements appeared the 5 inner elements, the sense factors, and so forth, leading to the formation and existence of the entire universe and its inhabitants. All the beings of the 3 realms of the 6 classes are enmeshed in the ignorant web of fixation on subject and object, spun around by the wheel of existence of the 12-fold dependent origination, and tormented by the numerous wretched miseries due to the effects of engaging in evil actions, of disturbing emotions, and confused clinging. Although this is so because of not recognizing suffering as suffering, they exert themselves with solid fixation in an effort which creates only the causes and seeds that lead to repeatedly wandering in samsara. The condition of all beings of the 3 realms is surely like this. The Talgar says, the aggregates and all the elements of the sense factors and the formations of karma from the countless gatherings of disturbing emotions form the thoughts of all beings. The many various dependent arisings cause their different bodies, and so forth. The Pearl Garland Tantra further states, thus the 3 worlds, the 5 aggregates, the 5 sense faculties, the 5 limbs, the 5 organs, the 5 objects, and the 5 disturbing emotions, the 5 cognitive acts, the 5 mental faculties, the 5 conceptions, all of samsara have been created by subject and object fixation. Through this confusion, the dualistic perception, like a swiftly spinning wheel, one has continuously remained in samsara for a long time. Thus it has been extensively explained. Now you might ask, if until today we have been trapped in the mire of this cyclic existence, won't it be impossible to turn away from the confusion and be liberated? No. It is not impossible, because all the impure samsaric phenomena have, in the ultimate sense, never move away from the empty space of dharmata and are merely superficial, a display of non-existent appearances, just like a dream. They are, in other words, only a magical display of vivid presence arising out of the state of emptiness, like clouds arising, remaining in, and dissolving back into the sky. They consist of no true or real substance other than that. Consequently, when you recognize and realize your own nature, there is no difficulty in being liberated. In particular, the original and natural state of great wisdom, of ultimate primordial purity, as described above, is present in the mind stream of all sentient beings. Since it is beyond change and transmigration, increase and decrease, whoever understands and realizes it isn't the slightest bit different from the original Samittabhadra. The Pearl Garland Tantra teaches all these variegated appearances, like perceiving a rope to be a snake by perceiving them to be what they are not. Both the outer world and inner inhabitants were formed. When examined, it is simply a rope. The world and beings are primordially empty. Ultimately, they are superficial forms. It continues. The natures of the 2 truths are samadhi and mere worldly convention. Ultimately, there is no connection, as everything is liberated in its essence, the space of emptiness. Moreover, the Tantra of luminous space proclaims, the Sagata essence is present in all beings, like oil in a sesame seed. When liberated from ignorance, the body of the elements will return without remainder to the nature of wisdom. Thus, possessing the key instructions on the practice, you will have the fortune to be liberated. So that includes the background, on the ground, and some background information on the formation of what we call samsara and how that is perceived. Now, my advice is not to take that in a very literal manner, but as a metaphor for an understanding of how we perceive things and how we think that they are prior to being able to understand them in their natural state.